You're stronger together. Bear Grylls Adventures, the Blizzard Challenge. Chapter 1. Killer Rucksack, Stupid Tents. Ollie decided he wasn't going to enjoy Cat when his rucksack tried to kill him. He had got a lift with his friend Jack, who'd been before. Jack's dad pulled into the car park, and Jack leapt out to go and report to one of the leaders. Ollie got out more slowly while Jack's dad popped the boot open. Ollie grabbed his rucksack and pulled. It didn't budge, but Ollie almost fell over. "It's heavy," he protested. "Well, there is a lot in it," Jack's dad replied. He lifted it out. I couldn't believe everything they told Jack to bring. Sleeping bag, climbing boots, running shoes, towels, umpteen changes of clothes. "Didn't you notice when you packed?" "My dad did it," Ollie said. "Oh, right." Jack's dad helped Ollie get the rucksack onto his back. Ollie almost fell over again. "It's a shame both your parents have to work this weekend. They do work hard, don't they?" "I suppose," Ollie muttered. Dad said the camp was a treat to make up for it. He would have rather just stayed at home alone, but apparently he wasn't old enough yet. Home had everything he needed: food, television, and no one else around. Jack came running back. We'll have to check in together. Then we'll find out who we're in a tent with." His big smile said he was so looking forward to this. "Well, I'll see you in a couple of days." Then Jack got a hug from his dad. Ollie got a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Enjoy yourselves." Ollie watched the car drive off. Then he turned and glumly followed Jack. The leader was a smiling woman with a clipboard. She took their names and then called another boy over. "This is Omer," he said. "We're putting everyone into threes and you're sharing a tent together." "Hi, Omer," Jack said happily. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Jack and this is my friend Ollie." "Sure," Omer said. He smiled back, but he was already turning away like he was impatient to get on. "I found where we get the tents from," he called over his shoulder. "Let's go." "Wow, he's keen, isn't he?" Jack commented as he set off after him. "So that's two of them," Ollie thought to himself. They were giving their tent and equipment in a huge bag that was so heavy all three had to carry it between them to a spot on the campsite. Then they had to put it up. It wasn't a modern pop-up tent where you threw it on the ground and it shot up like magic. Nothing so easy. "Okay," Homer said. "I've done this before. We have to fit these together so they stand up. Then we hang the canvas on the frame. So we just have to find the bits that go together." They started to rummage through the pile of poles. Ollie soon found a couple that seemed to fit, and it looked like Omer had a couple that would screw the ones he had. Ollie put his poles down so that Omer could use them when he was ready, and looked through the pile to see which other ones went together. "Come on," Omer said impatiently. After a moment, Ollie looked up. "What? Pass them over!" Omer pointed at the poles Ollie had put down. "I've got a whole lot that fit here. I just need those ones." "I was about to pass them to you," Ollie said. Omer got up to fetch them, rolling his eyes and muttering under his breath. After that, they had to put the frame over the ground sheet, then drag the canvas over the whole thing and tie it on. Finally, they had to hammer pegs into the ground and attach guy ropes to them to make sure the tent didn't blow away in the wind. "Okay, I know how to do the ropes." Jack and Ollie looked at each other. "You hammer in the peg, then attach the ropes and tighten them, don't you?" Jack asked. Homer shook his head. "No, it's better than that. You make the ropes as tight as possible while you hammer the peg in. That way the peg makes them even tighter. So all three of us will have to do each rope. Two of us pull and one of us hammers." So Ollie put the first peg through a loop at the end of the first guy rope while Jack and Homer pulled. Ollie gave the peg a thwack with the rubber mallet. The mallet bounced back and almost hit him in the eye. The peg didn't budge. Whoa, he shouted. You okay, Jack asked. Ollie tried again, but still the pick wouldn't go in. The ground's too hard, he moaned. I'll do it. Omer grabbed the mallet from Ollie before he could say anything. Ollie took Omer's place and pulled on the rope with Jack. Omer shifted the peg of the door to the left and hammered it, and no problem. Ollie turned and the door spread. You were over a stone, Omer said scornfully. Let's get the other stone. Only 5 more to go. Omer kept the mallet to do the rest. When all the tents were up, one of the leaders walked into the middle of the campsite and blew on a whistle. Okay, everyone, now we're all here. Let's get to the meeting place. Time to move, Omer exclaimed. He hurried straight off, gesturing at the other two to follow. Jack started to move, then realized Ollie was lagging behind. Coming? He asked. He did a little dance to show he really wanted to go. Yeah, Ollie muttered. Coming. He followed them with his hands in his pockets, dragging his feet slowly. Chapter 2. Guns and ducking up. In a sandy clearing in the middle of the woods, a man was shouting instructions. We're going to finish today with a barbecue, but first, this afternoon's challenge is to build a den with your tent mates. You have 3 hours. Use whatever you find in the woods, bring it back here, and we'll build our dens together. He paused. First team to complete their den gets a prize, and you'll also get points for style, original thinking, how weatherproof it is. You get the idea. Ollie certainly got the idea, even though he couldn't believe his ears. He nudged Jack. We're going to spend the afternoon making dens? He asked, just in case he had misheard. Yup, Jack replied. Why are you making dens when you've got tents? Because it's fun, Jack said. Ollie rolled his eyes. This whole camp thing was just one pointless activity after another. Jack, Ollie, and Omer set off into the woods, and before long they came to a clearing where there were piles of logs, branches, and sticks just perfect for den making. A lot of the other kids had the same idea. There's plenty of laughing and friendly bickering as they all tried to be the first ones to get the really good pieces of wood. Ollie was half-heartedly tugging at the branch when an ear-splitting shriek made him jump so fast he thought he pulled a muscle. A girl on the other side of the log pile was staring at something in front of her. Could you scream a bit louder? He asked sarcastically. She scowled and shivered. There's a massive spider. Ollie peered over. The spider was about an inch across, which he didn't think was massive at all. I just have a problem with creepy crawly, she added apologetically. She looked miserable. Ollie was sorry for being sarcastic, but he didn't get a chance to say anything else because just then, Ollie, stop gassing and get over here, Omer shouted impatiently. It took Ollie less than 20 seconds to get where Jack and Omer were, but Omer glared at him like he had held him up for hours. He showed Ollie the bits of wood he and Jack had pulled together. These are the right length and strength, he said. We'll use these for the basic structure. Ollie groaned to himself. It would be like putting the tent up all over again, but harder because these branches weren't designed to go together. And then we can find smaller ones with lots of leaves, Jack agreed, and use them to make a roof and walls to keep the rain and wind out. Yeah, but first we need to get these back to the meeting place, said Owen. First team gets a prize, remember? Let's go. They each had 2 large branches to carry. Jack wrapped his arms around both and carried them across his chest. Omer stuck one over each shoulder and kept them steady with his hands. They both set off. Ollie tried it Jack's way first, but the wood felt too heavy, and the ends kept getting in the way. So he tried it Omer's way. The shoulders weren't used to that kind of weight, and the wood kept rolling off. Eventually, he tried to drag his pieces on the ground. That stopped his shoulders aching, but It actually turned out to be the hardest of all. The end kept getting tangled in the undergrowth, and the wood was yanked out of his hands. Come on, Ollie, Omer called up ahead. We'll run out of time. So stop shouting and start building, Ollie thought with gritted teeth. Eventually, Ollie reluctantly decided that Jack's way was best, even though it made his arms ache. He caught up with the other two at the meeting place and dropped the logs. Okay, now we need the small stuff, Omer said, hurrying off. Another couple of hours and we'll be done. As Jack and Omer headed back into the woods, Ollie's heart sank. A couple more hours in making this stupid thing. What was the point? He stopped suddenly as the thought struck him. That's right. What was the point? Answer, there wasn't one. Omer and Jack could obviously do it without him. So why didn't he just leave them to do it? And so Ollie went slower and slower, and the others got further and further ahead of him. Then he swung off to the right and started to pick up his pace. The trees grew closer together. Where there weren't trees, there was tall bracken. Soon he couldn't see everyone else, just hear voices. A couple of times he heard a scream, so he guessed the girl from the woodpile had seen another spider. Result, Ollie thought. Now he could spend the afternoon in the tent listening to music. It wouldn't be as good as being at home watching TV, but it was better than this. Are you lost? Said a girl's voice right behind him. You're on your own. Ollie almost jumped out of his skin. He hadn't heard her come up. I'm just going this way, he said, pointing through the woods. It was true. He was going to where the tents were. You don't look like you're enjoying camp, she said. It was like she could read his mind, and Ollie couldn't think of a good answer. I think you need this. She held something out, and Ollie took it. It was a compass. There was nothing special about it. It had a transparent plastic dial with a needle that always swung slowly to point north. Why did he need a compass? He could find his way on his own. But when he looked up, the girl was already walking off. So he slipped the compass into his pocket anyway and continued to head back to the tent. Chapter 3. Fifth direction. This is stupid, Ollie muttered. He lay on top of his sleeping bag and stared at the canvas ceiling of the tent. He was finally doing what he wanted. But when he tried to focus on his word, the words just seemed to swim around in front of his eyes. He couldn't make himself care about the story, and the music on his iPod sounded dull and flat. He felt guilty and even more bored than before. Ollie sighed. Okay, this had been a bad idea. If he had to be bored, then he might as well do it with the others, even Omer. He got up and headed back to the woods. It took Ollie a while to find Jack and Omer amongst all the other kids racing around, still gathering den material. Eventually he saw Jack in the distance through the trees, carrying a heap of fern leaves. It looked like he could do with a hand. Ollie set off after him. Omer and Jack were building their den at the edge of the meeting place. As Ollie made his way through the trees, he got quite close to them without their real eyes. Hearing their voices made him smile. He had sort of met them. Jack was his friend and Omer was... Okay, Omer wasn't his friend. Not exactly, but he wasn't nasty, just a bit impatient. Then you heard what the boys were saying. I don't know why you bother with that loser Ollie, Omer said to Jack. Hey, Ollie's not, Jack began. Well, he's not here, is he? Omer snapped. We can do it without him. Here, help me tie this. Ollie stood where he was stunned. So, he thought, now I know what Omer thinks of me. And what was he supposed to do now? Pretend he hadn't heard? He turned around and went back to the tent. Ollie lay on a sleeping bag. Again. And this time he was both bored and upset. And now he came to think about it, he was also hungry. It was time for the barbecue, so everyone would be gnashing on lovely burgers and sausages. But Ollie didn't want to face Omer, So he just lay there alone for what felt like forever. Eventually it started to get dark and Ollie heard voices getting near. The barbecue was over and it was time for bed. Jack and Homer pushed their way through the tent flap. Homer's lip curled slightly when he saw Ollie, like he thought Ollie smiled. Jack just looked sad. We built a really good den, Jack said after a moment. You'd have liked it. Did you win the prize? Ollie asked. No, Homer told him abruptly. Because there were only 2 of us. We needed 3 to get everything done in time. After that, no one said anything much. The boys got ready for bed and slid into their sleeping bags. Outside, camp was going quiet. Still, Ollie could tell from the sound of Jack and Homer's breathing that they were asleep. He could still hear voices from other tents, but one by one they went silent. He lay in his sleeping bag feeling wide awake. He could still hear Homer's words in his head. Somehow Ollie had to get through the rest of camp knowing what Homer really thought of it. And Jack was obviously disappointed with him too. At least if he could sleep, Ollie thought it would be over quicker. He often fell asleep listening to music, so he felt in the dark for his iPod. The screen lit up just in time for him to see the words connect to power source. Then it went blank. Ollie groaned and let his hand flat back with the dead iPod. Something hard and plastic knocked against his knuckles. What was that? He held it up in front of his face so that he could see it in the dim light. Oh yeah, the compass. See, suddenly the compass dial lit up as if a light had come on behind it. That was weird because there was nowhere for a battery to. Ollie could make out the needle and the 4 illuminated markings were north, south, east, and west. They were just bright enough for him to see without being able to read. He turned it idly in his hands, watching the needle stay on north. But then the needle seemed to be turning on its own. Ollie watched it as it slowly spun through north, east, south, west, and stopped on a 5th marking. Huh? Ollie said out loud. He couldn't hide his surprise. How were there suddenly 5 directions? Jack and Homer stirred, but they didn't wake up. Ollie looked around suspiciously, looking for an explanation. Then he looked back at the compass. He couldn't see in the dim light what the 5th direction was called, but he could see the needle was pointing out of the tent. Just as he looked over at the flap, a gust of cold wind blew through and he gasped. It was so cold, it was like someone had slid a knife made of ice under his skin. Absolutely freezing. Ollie clambered over to zip the flap properly closed. Suddenly, bright sunlight shone into the tent. Ollie blinked hard, paused, then slowly crawled out and stood up. He stared in astonishment at what he saw. He should have been in the middle of the campsite surrounded by tents, and it should have been night time. In fact, it was daylight, and he was standing on a rocky ground covered with bright white snow, surrounded by a giant mountain. What? It was freezing, even though the sun was shining so brightly in the blue sky that Ollie had to screw his eyes to sleep. He wrapped his arms tight around himself. He could feel the cold eating into his bones. Hey, a man's voice shouted in his ear. Quick, or you'll freeze to death!